Here we are again, folks. Brother Peter with tidbits from the Words. I have a little bit of a controversial subject today to speak about, and that's how should we dress today as Christians? Should we dress moderately, or should we do as many have done today? They dress provocatively. Men dress provocatively to bring people's attention to what size they are, how they are, and different things. And women do the same. And they want to represent their bodies as beautiful sexual objects. Well, a woman is a beautiful object, not necessarily a sexual object. We're supposed to look at women as a lovely thing, which women are. They're lovely. My wife went on to heaven in April after being married since 1963. And I never, ever thought my wife was provocative. Matter of fact, when I met her in 1959, she was a little bitty girl, 15 years old. But she was always dressed properly. She always wore a blouse and a skirt. And she always looked extremely wonderful as a girl, or as a woman, in the way she dressed. And she didn't try to be over flashy or anything, just common, normal, everyday person. And God had me attracted to her, and I was attracted to her. And right up until the day she went to heaven, she dressed the same way. All through her life, you can see pictures of her for 50-something years. We were married, and I always see pictures of her in a blouse and a skirt, a dress, or whatever. And she was never provocative when she went to church. She never wore provocative clothes, or provocative shorts, or a provocative blouse, or anything like that. And she was always paid attention to that. Well, I've got a magazine here. Back in the 80s, we used to do a lot of stuff going to Tennessee Temple and whatever. And we used to be in touch with some people that were really up front in those days. And we used to listen to the Good News broadcast, and even had one of the fellows come to my house and visit before, when I lived in Pine Mountain, and talked to me about promoting that broadcast and working in it. And so Back to the Bible broadcast, it's from Lincoln, Nebraska. But this guy, Warren Wiersbe, that was a real champion, still is a real champion, by the way. Anything you can find written by him, or anything stated by him, or any messages by him, get them, listen to them. You can grow. Why should we have a voiceless witness. I have a voiceless witness. I'm wearing right now a tie and a white shirt and a vest, and I have a black jacket I put on. When I go out of this house, because I am today a representative of Jesus Christ, I dress pretty much this way all the time. People know me. Everybody knows me as a preacher. When they see me, they know me as a preacher. And they expect me to speak about God to them. They expect me to reach in my pocket and get out a tract and hand them a tract. And what I do with these, some of these here, when I'm doing a visiting, when I'm street doing it, I put a little dollar bill in them. Or when I go to a store and I go through a cashier, I put a little dollar bill in there and I hand it to them. That speaks a little bit sometimes. And especially at McDonald's, those girls, they don't make much. They make pennies, and they work hard. If I'm going to a fast food restaurant and give them a tract with a dollar bill, it speaks. And so we can do those kind of things, and we need to do those kind of things. But dress, what is dress? How do you dress? I try not to dress sloppy. I try not to look like I just came, which I have been a paint contractor most of my life, but I try not to look like I just came off a paint job when I'm out. And I go to gas pumps And I witnessed, much of my witness is done at gas pumps. I pull into a station, and I used to do this back in the early 70s even. I'd pull in, I'd put $1 worth of gas in the tank, and give the guy a tract, and give the people that was around there a tract. I'd go to the next station, get $1 worth, and give the guy a tract and the people a tract. And I'd go and I'd run around town till I got enough gas in my tank so I couldn't put another $1 worth in. But that was the way I used to do ministry. And that's how you do it. But I always dressed appropriately for that ministry. I always tried to wear a shirt and a tie or something and look so that people wouldn't feel bad. Now, I can walk up to a person today, 3 o'clock in the morning, down at the gas pumps. I can actually walk up to a person dressed like this and hand them a tract, and they're not afraid of me. If I'm dressed in my street clothes and I walk up to a person, they say, "Hey, wait a minute, what do you want? What do you want?" They're already skittish. But you're accepted. People recognize that a man of the cloth is supposed to look like a man of the cloth if he's going to be out and do things. Not be haughty and high-minded or anything, but to just look decent. Now this gal, her name was Karen Holloway. In 1982, she put a piece in Bible Broadcasting in January of '82. At that time, she was a lady that was out to get her BA degree and in California. But she wrote this beautiful piece, and she was a lady of Scripture, of great Scripture. She reminds me of my wife in her dress. She dressed moderately, and that made her look like a beautiful woman, moderately dressed. That's the way a woman should look. And then, so we can put on our Sunday best when we need to, and we need to on Sunday. And we need to if we're doing God's work, if we're going out door knocking. If I'm going out door knocking, I'm going to put my Sunday best on as a representative. I say I'm an evangelist. And I say to people, I'm an evangelist from Faith Baptist Church, and I'd like to invite you to church. And then, by the way, I say after I hand them a tract, if you died right now, would you go to heaven? Boy, that gets a question. You can see on the facial expression whether that was a yes or a no or maybe, I don't know. And you get a chance to leave a message, sometimes when the people right there on their doorstep, to the Lord, and get them coming to church. But Miss Holloway here is talking about our voiceless witness. What is our voiceless witness? It's the way we dress. And the Bible tells us that we need clothing on. And we need the right clothing. We actually need to clothe with Christ. Matthew 25:35 through 40 tells us this. For he said, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me meat. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. And now we can clothe a person with different things. I like to clothe the person with the Holy Spirit. See them get clothed with the Holy Spirit. Then I can help them with their personal clothes when they come to church. Nowadays we have men come in the church with shorts on. They come into church, look like they just came from the bar room of a fishing trip. And they come walking in, and they even smell bad some, and they come in their hunting jackets, and they come in all kinds of ways. And they don't think anything of it anymore. They come in with a drink in their hand. I came from a day that if when my daddy was preaching, if somebody had walked in the church with a drink in their hand, he would have stopped and said, just a minute, I've got something to take care of. He would have walked down off the podium. He would have walked back and said, sir, this is a place of respect. I would appreciate it if you take your drink back outside and leave it and then come on back in and worship. Because the man didn't come back in, but he took his drink out. But as we clothe ourselves, we should keep Christ in mind. A Christian at all times should meet high standards in the way they dress. We never thought that we would come to the day that we're in today. That you can't sit down in a pew in a church today without seeing the majority of the legs of a woman sitting in a pew somewhere near you. You have to concentrate on the preacher, concentrate on the message, otherwise your mind will be where it's not supposed to be. Because scant clothes today, a woman wearing a provocative blouse and whatever. So we need to be careful. Romans 12 and 2. Let's take a look at that. Romans 12 and verse 2 says this, and do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is a good and acceptable thing. What is the renewing of your mind when you get saved? That is to make sure that you're not provocative to a man if you're a woman, or if you're a man, if you're a woman, not to a man. Separate from the world and the world's values. In fact, the human existence that people may characterize by their clothes. Christ noted that the Pharisees could be distinguished by their flowing robes. Those who live in palaces are known for their expensive costume or their clothes. And it told us in Mark 12 that you could always pick a Pharisee out. Well, a Pharisee was not a Christian man, but he wanted to look like something special. So he wore a special clothes, which is not bad to wear good-looking clothes. It's the thing is why you wear them, or what you do with them, and how you and you remember angels were dressed with shining light. Their clothes were light, and that covered them. Even God is said to be clothed in the majesty. In Psalms 93 and 1, we see that he is clothed in majesty, in the light. But he is clothed, we see, for our efforts to formulate a Christian dress code, we must be wary lest our concern are clothing ourselves with a Christ-like manner. It leads us to discriminate against others according to their outward dress. James chided those who would pay special attention to a finely dressed man while shunning those that were dressed in rags. Now, we have poor folks that come to church. They don't have something better to dress in, so we don't shun them. But I will say this, the majority of poor women that come to church more properly dressed than the woman who can afford that very nice apparel that's cut in today's fashion. Today's fashion is cut to bring out the shape of a woman. And the shape of a woman is what triggers a man's thinking and his thoughts. And another thing, they like to show off their bodies. And God said, that's not a thing to do when you go to church. Clearly, we are not to treat people differently just because they may appear different by their dress. However, we are to be concerned about the message we convey to others by clothing we wear. Clothing, though it's just a voiceless, is expressionless. The manner of which a person is clothed reveals something about his character and his value. Before Christ was crucified, a purple robe was placed on him. Now, we see that the world thinks a lot of how you are dressed. They put that purple robe on him. By rights, he should have had a purple robe on him. But they did it in mockery, but that's beside the point. The point is that it was a symbol of his claim to his kingship, and the choice of clothing, though done in mockery, was in keeping Christ's character as King of Kings. Even so should Christians' clothing be in keeping with the character as a child of the King. It's terrible when you're standing in the vestibule and you're talking with somebody, and all of a sudden in pops this woman dressed like a harlot, and you are embarrassed for her. I'm embarrassed for her that she hasn't seen that she needs to cover up her skin, not stick it all out for everybody to see. And our clothing is an expression not only of the inward selves, but also of the relationship that we have with God. Remember, Moses directed the Hebrew children to concentrate themselves in preparation for the Lord's appearance on Mount Sinai by washing their clothes, and the state of their clothing was seen as a sign of respect for God. Now, the state of their clothing was a sign for God, evidently, and many people today, they just are dirty all the time. They're dirty all the time. We have lots of people today. We have that group that walks in all dirty in their work clothes and don't care. It'd be different if you were just coming off from work and you didn't have a chance to go home Wednesday night and you wanted to come in and hear the service. And out of respect, sit on the back pew, which I've done before. I've been in my paint clothes before, sit in the back pew and come in just a little bit late and leave just a little bit early. Nobody really saw me. And didn't feel bad about doing that, so I could catch the service. But to make a habit of that is not good. Our clothing is expressive not only from the inward self, but also from the relationship with our Creator God. And so we see the origin of clothes, as revealed in Genesis, is a direct result of man's sinfulness. The purpose of clothing is those associated with a sense of shame and modesty. Now, in 1 Timothy, he talks about we need to be clothed with the righteousness of God. But Adam and Eve, after they sinned, God made a covering for them out of a lamb's skin. He covered both of them with a sheep's skin. And I'm sure that he covered Eve all the way from her shoulders down and didn't leave anything to be seen or by another person. And so the woman was dressed, adorned themselves properly, modestly, discreetly, not with braided hair and gold apparel and costly garments, but rather by means of good works and benefits, a woman making a claim to godliness. I couldn't hardly buy my wife a necklace. I couldn't hardly, no, I don't want that kind of glory. That's too much. Or she would wear something little, a little frog on a chain or something, but she didn't want anything expensive. She never wanted to plait her hair and put gold things in her hair and all kinds of stuff and everything. She was a modest woman, godly modest. And she was a beautiful woman. Everybody always said to me, "You got the prettiest woman I've ever seen, and one of the prettiest women in the church," and all this and that. People would say, and here she was, a plain Jane woman. Spent most of her life in the church. Spent a good 40 years in the nursery. A good 40 years, every Sunday in the nursery, in the nursery, in the nursery, in the nursery, in the nursery. She dressed like a nursemaid. She dressed like a nursemaid. She knew the clothes she wore were going to get a little throw up on them, going to get a little other stuff on them, and so it was very modest. But yet was accepted as one of the finest Christian women you ever met. And see, she didn't dress provocatively. Never. The purpose of Paul's message is not to prohibit the braiding of your hair or the wearing of gold jewelry, which is at the time was signs of extreme self-indulgence and pride, but discourage women from using their outward appearance to attract undue attention to themselves. By the same principle, modern clothing, which is fleshly, like brassieres, you know, the pointed ones and whatever, provocative, and they are attention getters, and they are unsuitable for women and men who are marking their claim of godliness. If you have a claim of godliness, you don't need to buy that provocative bras that women can wear today. And now they wear bras today that are so low cut and blouses that are so low cut that it leaves nothing to the imagination of how much bust they do have. And that's not a proper way. That's not a proper way to dress if you're a Christian. Now, Christian women should be particularly mindful of how their clothing affects a man who sees them. Male are easily turned on by seeing women's breast outlined by a tight t-shirt or revealing low-cut top. Christians are exhorted to act in such a way as not to cause others to stumble in sin. Christians should choose their clothing appropriately. We have left, she's doing this, she's talking about this in 1982. She's talking about this. All this is shot out the window. It's gone. Very, very, very few women do you see come in moderately today. The women, when I'm in the vestibule at the church that I go to, the women that I am attracted to are the women in plain dresses. A nice plain woman's dress, a nice plain woman. She's a housewife. She's a keeper of the house. She probably keeps a clean house, sweeps the floors, does the thing, cooks the meals, does the things a woman ought to do, and she's beautiful in her setting. And that's what she's supposed to be, in her setting. She's not supposed to be. If she's going to do any kind of that adorning of that type of thing or anything, she should do that at home for her husband. When he comes home from work, she can dress like that and be like that. And only one should see her like that would be him. Because he's the only one she's supposed to turn on, is him, not nobody else. And so Christians should also select clothing which distinguishes them not just as people of God, but as men and women. And today, not was just something to be sexually different, and it's been blurred today. It's been blurred. Women liberation and gay liberation. It's important to reaffirm the fact that God created two sexes, not a unisex, and this in mind. And Christians, now we're going to the opposite thing. Now we have women, you can't tell they're a woman when they come in the church. They have their hair cut off. I personally am a very, very curious man about hair. I think that when they talked about a woman being uncovered in church back in the Bible days, it was mean they had their hair cut. And we have women today, you can't tell the women. We sat in the back of the church today and I say, I wonder if that's a woman or a man just came in. Can't tell if it's a woman or a man. And women lose their femininity when they dress like a man or look like a man or they get their hair cut off. The Lord has blessed me in a family with my wife that never had her hair cut. Never, ever had her hair cut short. Always had long hair. I've got some daughter-in-laws have long hair. My daughters have long hair. Many of the people in my family, I don't remember anybody in my mother's side of the family. I don't remember any women in my mother's side of the family that ever got their hair cut. I don't remember women in my daddy's side of the family that ever got their hair cut. They always had long hair. All the pictures you see of any of my ancestors all the way back through always had long hair. And they looked very good. They were very good looking women, and not sexually, but just a beautiful woman. And you can look at a woman and say, that's a beautiful woman, without thinking bad thoughts. And Christian women should look like that. And so we have this liberation today of women looking like men. And we need to be very careful in the church. Now men need to be careful too when they go to buy their clothes, that they don't buy clothes that are made just to be provocative for the man. Pants that are very, very tight all the way to the waist and just are very provocative in an area that it shouldn't be in the public. And then with shirts today, tank tops. Actually, we had people actually walk in the church with a tank top on, and women wear tank tops too sometime around, and that's not proper dress for the church. So we need to look better. We need to look like where we would look if God came along. Let's look at this one thing this lady writes right here. Let's ask himself, would the same piece of clothing be equal suitable for a man, or does it distinguish me as a woman? Another discriminating question to ask is, Does this piece of clothing enhance my sexual attractiveness to the eyes of a man, or my personal attractiveness to the eyes of God? An honest examination of our motive or the wanting certain styles over others will help us choose clothing which is worthy of our Creator. Because God would like to see us probably all dressed in lambskins, covered with the wool and looking properly. And because His design, when He designed man and woman, was not all sexual, even though He knew that we would get together and we would appropriate children, and that we would love each other, and we would hug each other, and we would hold each other, and we would have a fantasy over each other because of our difference and whatever. God knew that. But that's not for us to flaunt to anybody else but our husband or our wife. And that's it, period. We are not to go out and show that to anybody else. The critical look of clothing in the advertisements today, and the manufacturers today, and the people who cut the clothing today, they all are thinking in the wrong thought pattern. They all are thinking, how appealing is this to the other person? And then they have the group that do the unisex clothes. They say, well, how can we make this woman look as much like a man as we can, and make this man look as much like a woman we can, and yet him be a man, and that woman still be a woman, yet look like a man? And that's what we have today. And that is very, very disturbing in the big sense of the word, that we're raising a group of children that don't know how to dress, have no idea. They say, well, how do I dress? And we see teenage girls all of a sudden walking in with a man's hat on. What happened? They saw one of these unisex people dressed, a woman with men's clothing and a man's hat on. And so they are going toward the unisex dress. And we see a lot of that today. And then there's that opposite side where they come in with halters on, with flimsy blouses and sloppy t-shirts and sloppy jeans and shorts, tube tops, that display hundreds of Sunday services. And you could not turn your television on and watch some Sunday services that the camera goes across the people, and you can see people with no respect for God's house and no respect for the older generation or other people. God insisted such clothing draw our attention away from the reverence and owed to God, to the body of the individual. God says, do not do that. Do not do that. Dress in proper apparel. Dress in proper apparel. The manner is which we dress ourselves is a silent testimony. If we seek the admonishment of men, the admiration, to be admired of a man more than God, our clothing will manifest it. If we seek to live our lives which are pleasing to God, our clothing will conform to it. What message does your clothing convey? So you look at your wardrobe this week and say, do I want to look like a godly woman, or do I want to look like a woman of the street? Or man, do I want to look like a man of the street, or do I want to look like a godly man? I just absolutely positive 100%, I can't believe a man would get on the podium today without a necktie on. A man who has been invited to be on the podium. Song leader, I'm sorry if this offends you, but if you're a song leader, you need to get up there and look your very best for God's sake. For God's sake. If you feel like that you're so manually and so macho that you can get up there with your collar unbuttoned and a little hair sticking out and no tie on, you're too macho to be a song leader is what the problem is. I don't care how good you can sing. I don't care how good you can play the piano. I don't care what you can do. If you get up on that podium, and especially if you stand behind the sacred desk, the sacred desk that preacher stands behind is God's sacred place for that preacher. I tell you what, you step behind that desk without a tie on, you lose my respect for you instantly. Instantly. You don't belong there. If you're going to be a person that's up on the podium, up on that area, and you don't have a tie on, don't never step behind that God's special desk. You stand on the outside. I tell you what, if a priest would die if he went wrongly into the place of worship. If he went in there wrongly, he'd get struck dead. They had a rope they put on him. They put a rope on his foot. And when he went behind the Holy of Holies, and if he stepped up there to God and God didn't accept him, he got struck dead, and they pulled him out with that rope. And they sent another priest in. And I think that we've lost that today. We need to get back to that. Well, our time's come and gone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.